Oh, yeah. You know we got to talk about it. The 76ers are the favorites to land Taylor Jenkins per Bovada official. I'm going to give my opinion on that, and I want you to give me your opinion on it. This one is brought to you by BetUS. Right now on BetUS, you can get a 150% deposit bonus on your first deposit and 125% on your next two, up to $2,000 by using code YouTube150. Here's the lines for today's March Madness games. Michigan State, Auburn, plus 185. Tennessee, number one ranked Houston, plus 129. It has been a blast watching March Madness so far this season. It's why I didn't watch the Sixers game last night. And yeah, so get a 150% deposit bonus on your first deposit, 125% on your next two by using promo code YouTube150. Thank you to BetUS for sponsoring the channel. Hit the like button for me one time. Here you go. The Philadelphia 76ers are the favorites to land Taylor Jenkins per Bovada official. Now, first of all, why would the 76ers be the favorites to land the first available head coach? Is he the first available head coach this season? I don't know if he's the first coach to be fired this season. No, somebody else got fired. Mike Brown got fired at the beginning of the season. But why would they be the favorites to land somebody who was just fired? Why would the 76ers be at the top of this list? It's because the NBA world is assuming that Nick Nurse is going to be fired. And why is Nick Nurse going to be fired? Because Nick Nurse is terrible. We gotta accept it now. You know, I still have people reply to me that do the whole, what was he supposed to do with an injured roster all season? You know, it's not his fault. Everybody was out. Anybody that watched the 76ers this season will agree Nick Nurse was god-awful. God-awful. And the 76ers were actually better once they admitted that they were terrible and they stopped trying to run his systems. He was bad in every single possible way. And it's time to go. And if you disagree with that, you flat out were not watching Sixers games this year. Or you were watching and just saw something completely different than I saw. And you are entitled to your terrible opinion. But anyway, we're talking about Taylor Jenkins. Now, I don't follow the Memphis Grizzlies intently. All I know about Taylor Jenkins really is that he was the best Memphis Grizzlies coach in history as far as the stats go. And he looks like Hopper from Stranger Things. And who doesn't want a local police officer who fights aliens as their head coach? I do. No, but seriously, Taylor Jenkins was fired. Nobody really knows why, and the 76ers are the favorites to hire him this upcoming offseason, and I hope they do so. Let's talk about it. First of all, the Memphis Grizzlies have met with 91-year-old Hubie Brown as a candidate to be their next head coach. After a 20-year hiatus, he's heavily favored to land the job before the playoffs begin. That's not true. That's a joke. That is NBA Centel. And that is hilarious. Hubie Brown is 91 years old. Here's the recent reactions on the Taylor Jenkins firing. JJ Redick said, "I always felt like he's one of the best." Coach Eric Spoelstra: "It's incredibly disappointing. His record speaks for itself." Coach Budenholzer: "Shocked. His record speaks for itself." Coach Budenholzer was also fired while having a winning record with the Milwaukee Bucks. Coach Malone: "Shocking and odd at the same time." Budenholzer was fired, and then somebody else took over, and then he was fired the next year. And that's how Doc Rivers ended up there. Shocking and odd at the same time. Taylor Jenkins: most wins ever by a Grizzlies coach. Top 10 in wins since becoming coach. Top 3 defense since becoming coach. Now, I say all the time that NBA coaches are massively overrated. You know, wins and record and rankings and all the. I believe a coach instills a culture. it's another one of the reasons I'm so over Nick Nurse. He's not instilled any type of culture in this team at all, and it feels like the players don't even give a fuck at all. You know what I'm saying? He has not gotten players to play above a certain level or put in an extra, go to the next gear or whatever. I do think a coach instills a culture in a team, and it starts in the locker room, and it starts in the practice facility, and it starts with discipline and repetition and habits and things like that, and holding players accountable. And not just letting superstar players do whatever the fuck they want all the time, like fly to Las Vegas in the middle of a playoff series. That was Doc Rivers with James Harden. But anyway, I also am a firm believer that these numbers have a lot to do with the players on the court. Obviously, you have Ja Morant, okay? And when Ja Morant's healthy, the Memphis Grizzlies are a contender every single year. And when he's not healthy, they are not good. Same thing as any superstar, the Joel Embiid situation in Philly every year, Giannis in Milwaukee, any superstar. When he's healthy, they're a contender. When he's not, they're out. But, their defense, top 3 defense since becoming head coach, that has a lot to do with Jaren Jackson Jr. and some other guys that they've had. Steven Jackson before he tore his ACL. But it's a well-built team, Desmond Bane is a guy that can give you 25 alongside of Ja Morant, and he has the biggest biceps in the NBA, which is awesome. It's a well-built team, so you got to give credit to management also. But I do really, really like the culture that Taylor Jenkins has implemented in this franchise, and that does have a lot to do with the cohesiveness, how they've grown together, and how they've ended up, winning since he's been there. Top 10 in wins since becoming coach. Top 3 defense since becoming coach. Most wins ever by a Grizzly. Now, why? We got to look at why did he get fired? Because it doesn't make sense. Everybody seems confused about it, right? NBA coaches don't know why he got fired. Everybody's saying it's disappointing. His numbers speak for themselves. It doesn't really make sense. So let's find out why. Memphis Grizzlies fire Taylor Jenkins, franchise's winningest coach. I don't know if this is going to tell us why, but we're going to try to find out why. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out. Once again, hit the like button for me one time. Helps grow the channel greatly. The Memphis Grizzlies fired Taylor Jenkins, their winningest coach, on Friday, with the team struggling down the stretch and at risk of losing home court advantage for the postseason. But again, Ja Morant has been in and out of the lineup. They went through a large part of this season without him again. And, they've been struggling down the stretch and are at risk of losing home court advantage for the postseason. But to fire a coach in the middle of that run, you know what I mean? Even the Sixers with Doc Rivers, you're going to wait till the season's over to fire a guy. Why are you going to fire him right before the playoffs start? We're struggling down the stretch. We're at risk of losing home court advantage. Fire the coach. Now you're at a much higher risk of losing home court advantage and losing in the playoffs because you got to get a new coach really fast. That doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, still sitting at number 5 in the Western Conference standings. I would say being number 5 with all of the injuries they've had this year is impressive. The Grizzlies decided to dump Jenkins anyway and waited until Friday night to announce assistant Tomas Lisalo as their interim head coach for the remainder of the season. Maybe they love this guy, Tomas Lisalo. Maybe this guy, Tomas Lisalo, put a hit out on Taylor Jenkins. Maybe he's buddy-buddy with management, and maybe he's been hanging out, at the owner's house on Friday nights, drinking wine, schmoozing the family, hanging out with the kids and the nephews, and told him, hey, man, listen, we're struggling, but it's not, I know what to do. I know how to fix it. I'm not saying fire him, but I'm just saying I can get us there. Anyway, Lisalo only joined the NBA as Jenkins' lead assistant before the start of the season, becoming the first Finnish-born coach in the NBA. The Helsinki native was a coach in Europe, including whatever. Jenkins led the Grizzlies for 6 seasons. He was let go with the team on the verge of playing 3 home games in a 4-day span starting Saturday. He was let go with the team on the verge of playing 3 home games in a 4-day span starting set. That's such a weird time to fire a coach. Now you got the Lakers, the Celtics, and Golden State. 3 home games in 4 days. Lakers, Celtics, Golden State. You're on the verge of losing home court advantage, and you want to go into this 3-game span with an interim head coach? That starts a stretch where 8 of Memphis' final 9 opponents are either playoff clubs or contending in a play-in spot, but it's still possible, at least mathematically, that Memphis could get back to number 2 in the West, and it's highly unlikely that the Grizzlies will fall into the play-in tournament range. Memphis decided to fire him. Is this the GM? Here's the GM. This was a difficult decision, given the consistent and tangible development of our players and our overall success under Taylor's leadership. What? You are shouting out the fact that he has consistently developed players. I mean, look at Desmond Bane. Look at Jaren Jackson Jr. Look at some of the players on this roster that have went from, possible star level players to defensive player of the year level players. How do you fire him and then shout out his consistent and tangible development of our players and overall success? That's crazy. Did he give any other quote? Jenkins has a career record of 250 and 214, most wins in franchise history. There's no other quote in here. That's all we get from the GM. This was a difficult decision. Why'd they fire him? Why'd they fire him, dude? We got to see if there's another quote from Memphis GM. Because I'm not understanding. Memphis GM. Let's see if that brings up anything here. Grizzlies GM was exceptionally short during his press conference. Said he focused on the best interests of the team and nothing more than that. Even paid Taylor Jenkins a compliment to kick things off. Focused on the best interests of the team. Grizzlies GM Zach Kleiman and former head coach Taylor Jenkins had an apparent rift. Zach blamed Taylor. Taylor blamed Zach. No one takes accountability for absolutely anything. Internal chaos ahead of the playoffs for Memphis. Wow. See? The world's not fair. It's a dog-eat-dog world, bro. And what sucks about it is if somebody else is in a position and it's you versus them and their position gives them the ability to save their own job by making you a scapegoat, they can do that. That's wild, man. That's wild. The GM blamed the coach blamed the GM, and at the end of the day, the general manager is able to fire the coach. Yo, these NBA teams have to stop letting these GMs ruin everything. Are you guys not learning from Nico Harrison? That some of these dorks don't know what they're doing? You're going to let the winningest coach in franchise history get fired because he doesn't agree with what the GM is doing? Maybe you need to fire the GM, dummies. Although, again, well-built roster. Maybe ownership felt like the GM has put us in this position by drafting these players and making these transactions. And if he doesn't agree with what the coach is doing, we're gonna ride with the GM. Like the Eagles and Howie Roseman and the Doug Peterson situation. Maybe that's what it is. People were making very big arguments that Doug Peterson was the best coach in Eagles history and all of these things. Where's he been since? But anyway, yeah, that's it, man. The Sixers are the favorite to land Taylor Jenkins, and we will see what happens as the season concludes. But I'm ready for Nick Nurse to be up out of here. And it's just because I haven't seen anything that makes me want him to stay around. I think that's as simple as it is for me as a Sixers fan with Nick Nurse. I haven't seen anything that makes me want to see more. Pause. Y'all have a good day, man. I'm out.